Luigi was soundly asleep in his room. A restful snooze was upon him, and luckily it wasn't one that others could be sucked into. No Marios were running around his dreamscape. Instead, it was a peaceful sleep, filled with pleasant dreams. Meatball slept soundly at the foot of his bed, curled up in that way cats tend to sleep. Her head was resting under her tail. She, too, was having some fulfilling dreams. Finally catching that electric mouse, she purred happily as she slept. A soft noise, however, awoke her from her sleep. The feline, groggily, remained still at first, hoping to find sleep once again. She was just getting to the good part. However, as the noise persisted, she found it impossible to return to the slumber she so enjoyed. Her first thought was to awaken her owner. Surely Luigi could put a stop to the annoying noise that persisted through the night. However, she decided against it. The human wasn't bothered by the noise. His chest still rose and fell in the blissful release of sleep. Stretching, Meatball decided to check out the strange occurrence herself. Being a cat, she was rather intrigued. Filled with curiosity, the cat hopped off the bed and began to walk. However, her instincts told her to stop. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. She wasn't alone with Luigi in this room. Blinking her feline eyes, Meatball gazed through the darkness to find the door to Luigi's hotel suite slightly agape. Her back arched, as her hair stood on end. There was an intruder. Before she could react, a hand was on her back, gripping her tightly and painfully. Meatball let out a loud, startled meow, before going berserk in the hands that gripped her. She went for blood, but the person or thing gripping her didn't cry out in pain. Luckily, whatever it was did seem to feel the sharp claws and teeth of the cat, as Meatball was dropped to the ground. She landed on her feet, hissing. Her eyes narrowed to slits, as she looked up at her attacker. A glint of a dagger reflected in the dim light of the hallway, and a sinister, unfeeling expression was held on the intruder's face. A low groan from Luigi signified that he was waking up. No doubt because of Meatball's efforts. The eyes of a Mii stared down at the cat. The mayor realized that if Luigi woke up and reported him, the whole operation would be blown. With a low sound, the Mii kicked Meatball hard, before running off. Meatball hit the wall behind the bed, letting out a hurt sound. The sound was all that was needed for Luigi to fully awaken. "Am Meatball?" Luigi asked groggily. The cat wasn't at the foot of his bed, which was odd. "Meatball? Where are you?" Meatball let out another hurt sound. Luigi flew to her side, to find her laying under the window. Thankfully, nothing seemed broken in the cat's flexible body. "Did you fall off the bed?" Luigi asked the cat, chuckling to himself. The plumber didn't realize the severity of the issue. Silly girl. Be more careful. Picking up his cat, he returned with her to the bed. He placed her in her usual spot, before slinking back under the covers once more. Meatball, however, didn't sleep. The cat was racked with curiosity. Who was that? Why had he come? Why didn't Luigi realize what had just happened? Once more, Luigi has fallen asleep. Meatball could tell by the rising and falling of his chest. With a little pain in her joints, Meatball hopped off of the bed. The door remained ajar. In the mystery attacker's hurry, he had left it wide open. Meatball shimmied through the opening, and was met by the blackness of the hallway, illuminated only by a few low lights. It was all Meatball needed to adjust to the darkness. The cat slunk down the hallway, jumping at every sound and movement she met along the way. Footsteps. Meatball's perked ears heard footsteps. Darting her head about, Meatball found no one making them, and deduced that they must be around the corner. With the skill of a true hunter, Meatball peeked her head around the corner, and what she saw was startling. In the stairwell at the end of the first hallway and spilling into the lower floor. Miis. Hundreds of Miis, all crammed into the tight space. Some more similar clothes to individuals Meatball had seen. A particular Mii seemed to mimic Luigi's style. Another, foxes. Still another, King K. Rool's. These were no ordinary Miis, however. None of them held the same semblance of humanity as the other Miis Meatball has met. Something about them felt cold, unfeeling. Their eyes seemed to glint a sinister orange. They all seemed to be staring at one particular Mii. An orange-shirted one with darker skin and no hair atop his head. The being radiated pure power, and seemed to be saying something. It was in some language that was alien even to Meatball, who'd met many travelers and fighters in her day. Meatball blinked twice, before scurrying off and back to Luigi. He needed to see this. The cat ran as fast as she could down the hallway, and into Luigi's room. There, she pounced upon her master and meowed loudly. Luigi let out an annoyed sound, before moving his pillow to cover his head. Meatball. It's 3 a.m. I don't wanna play. Meatball tried again and again, only to be cast off the bed. She blinked again. Didn't he want to know? This was important. Creak. Meatball turned her head, only to see the door that was open before closed shut. No more milky moonlight illuminated the room. One of those things new she saw. Richter made his way into the kitchen on a bright morning. Breathing in, air filled his lungs. Clear and beautiful, even for indoors. Today was shaping up to be a good day. Humming to himself, Richter grabbed a coffee pot and the coffee maker. He could go for a shot of liquid energy right now. He may be a self-proclaimed morning person, but that didn't mean he was immune to the early morning grogginess that had set over him. Setting up the machine, Richter leaned his back on the counter, arms back and relaxed. As he turned, however, he saw that something was amiss. Behind him was a swarm of Miis. Large were their numbers. Something about them gave off a sinister kind of vibe, but Richter couldn't pinpoint it. How had he missed all these fighters? They carried weapons of all shapes and sizes. Guns, party poppers, daggers. Some even held simply their bare hands. All of these Miis seemed to have randomized features, no two being the same. Scanning through the sea of Miis, Richter saw what was a familiar face. Lucina? Lucina, is that you? He cried out. Abandoning his coffee for the time being, the younger vampire slayer was overcome with a desire to go and ask the young woman about the strange occurrence. Lucina? This was a bad idea. It garnered the attention of every Mii in the crowd. Richter felt his throat freeze up as a shine of orange hit him. The individual he could have sworn was Lucina turned as well, being nothing more than a Mii look-alike. That feeling of today being a good day was slowly fading. I apologize. I didn't mean, I just thought, Richter sputtered, backing up slowly. One Mii, a young male wearing glasses, a crested helmet, and a permanent smile stood behind Richter. Richter nearly jumped out of his skin, turning to face him. The rest of the army was closing in on him. Richter could feel it. They weren't going in for a hug, either. They held no sort of humanity in those soulless, orange eyes. Richter was gripped with fear, but realized he'd been in a situation like this many times before. The Mii he bumped into tried to seize him, but Richter parried away. The rest of the mob was on him in mere seconds. A young woman dressed in black and with purple hair, brandished a dagger at his throat. This, too, Richter avoided, reaching for his own weapon. The magical whip felt natural in his hand, but its slower attack would be detrimental. Elbowing the dagger, Richter lashed out. It hit one poor fellow in the nose, knocking him backwards. There was no cry of pain, however. Simply a body hitting the floor, allowing for escape. Richter hurried to seize that escape. Dashing, he dove through arms that tried to clasp him. None quite grabbed him. Taking his holy water from his side, Richter tossed it at the ground. The sight of the fire ignited an instinct in the Miis to back away. That, and the fact that Richter was swinging for the fences, circling his whip around him as he dashed. "Be gone, demons!" he bellowed, as he dashed to the door of the room. Two Miis blocked it. With one sliding dash kick, both Miis and the door came tumbling down. "You don't belong in this hotel." Was this a dream? He hoped and prayed that it was. The wave of Miis followed closely at his tail. Just like the old days of storming Drax's castle. Richter couldn't help but smile to himself. The smile, however, was short-lived. Richter's breath was hard to find as his shoulder exploded in pain. The back of his shirt ripped clean with two fresh bullet holes, no doubt fired from the malicious-looking bearded man behind him, and so did a crushing realization. If he died out here in the hotel, he died for real. This wasn't like on the battlefield. If he was hurt out here, he'd stay hurt. If he died, he was out of stocks forever. His feet felt heavy, as the rush of pain hit his brain. Soon enough, another hole ripped through his shirt, and another shot of pain overtook him. He breathed in hard, clenching his teeth as he forced himself faster. Rounding a corner, Richter tossed 4 bottles of holy water from his sash. The fires roared once more, and no Mii was brave enough to follow where he was going. It was in this moment that Richter found himself a janitorial closet to dash into. Shutting the door behind him, the young bellman slumped down, holding on to his more damaged shoulder. He breathed lightly. More footsteps were coming his way. They grew louder, and louder still. He stopped breathing as the footsteps came from right outside the door. And, luckily for the injured man, they passed right on by. He breathed a sigh of relief. What are those things? He wondered aloud. They certainly weren't this. In the confines of the cabinet, Richter readjusted himself, sending a new shock of pain through his body. "Hey, well. This is how I died, huh?" He asked no one in particular. He could feel the blood pooling around him. Warm and wet. The pain was making him go loopy. His readjustment, however, might have saved his life. As he moved, a medical gauze fell into his lap. He looked up. This was no ordinary closet. This was the medical closet. Dr. Mario in the clinic ought to be nearby. If he could manage to make it out. The events rushed by in his head. There was an army of Miis. And they were out for blood. Where did they come from? What was happening? So many questions hung in the air for Richter. Perhaps he could tell the others. Perhaps he was their first victim. Richter groaned, as he applied the gauze to his wounds. All this for a cup of coffee? Richter was not, in fact, the first victim of the Army Eye. Mii noticed it first. The Army Eye had an uncanny ability to disappear whenever they wished not to be seen. Where they managed to hide from the curious eyes is still a mystery. A select few, however, were not hidden. The replacements. A Mii dressed and styled to look like Mario sat in his place at lunchtime. Other smashers sat with the imposter as if nothing were out of the ordinary. They spoke and laughed and made no acknowledgement towards the outsider. Mii, however, was not so easily fooled. He knew fighters were disappearing. Mario, Richter, and Zelda were of the missing right now. No one was any the wiser, however. That was, of course, except for Pokemon number 150. Where is your master, imposter? Mii asked telekinetically. Don't think I won't find out. I know you aren't the real Mario. The Mario Mii looked astonished at the Pokemon looming over him. Had his cover been blown so easily? But the rest of them seemed none the wiser. The Mario Mii decided that 1 in 80 plus was fine by him. No one else would believe Mii, after all. If only one person stated something so odd, surely it couldn't be true. Mii, annoyed by the lack of submission, did the sensible thing. Lifted the Mario Mii upwards, using the power of his mind. This drew astonished complaints from those around him. Mii, what in the world? Daisy started. Put him down. Peach cried. Mii ignored them. Telekinetically, he communicated again. In 3 seconds, your mind will be destroyed if you do not give me what I yearn for. Where is your master, and where are the other fighters? Again, the Mii said nothing. It stared dead ahead, right into Mii's emerald eyes. 3, 2, 0. Mii's concentration was broken, as he was inhaled by King Dedede's absorption. Appalled by Mii's actions, the king spat him back against the wall. What in the dreamland do you think you're doing? Dedede shouted. Why on earth would you? Mii floated back to his feet from his position against the wall. There was a stark anger in his eyes this time. That thing is not Mario. He communicated. Those Miis are up to something. Something destructive. They're depleting our numbers. If we don't do something to get out of my head. Dedede shouted, flailing his arms about. Miss? You're crazy. There ain't no way he's a Mii. That's good old Mario, right Mar? Dedede turned, and there was no Mario on sight. Musta had to go to Little Plumber's room, Dedede shrugged. He gave a pointed glance back at the psychic. You'd best be going now, before I mal at you silly. Mii glared at Dedede, before obliging. Not out of fear, but out of annoyance. Remain ignorant, then, Mii thought to himself. Floating through the air. But when you meet the same fate as the rest, don't say I didn't warn you. From the shadows, a force for revolution watched the creature, and noted him as their greatest threat. They'd failed at capturing or killing the first vampire hunter, but the psychic Pokemon was one they couldn't afford to lose against. The Smash Hotel needed to learn a lesson, and the goateed, bald, orange-wearing Matt was the only Mii for the job. The problem was growing more and more by the day. The machine continued to pump out more Miis. These Miis had only one thing in mind as they stepped out from the machine that birthed them. Each knew of the revolution even before they were truly born. In the creation cycle, the Miis were implanted with a specific goal in mind. A specific fighter to look for. A certain role to fill within the Army Eye. Tall, short, male, female, look-alike or not. Every last Mii took up their weapons and mounted an assault on the hotel. This didn't mean the mass production machine was perfect, however. In fact, on more than one occasion it completely neglected to give a Mii an aspiration. Being randomized, there was a small chance to be given no goal at all. A female Mii, endowed with pigtails and a pair of glasses for vision correction, was one of these few. She still bore the telltale orange eyes that the rest of the Army Eye had, but no malice lived within her heart. Sure, she had knowledge of the attack that was planned against the hotel, and she knew where they had kept their prisoners. But she had no intention on helping their cause. The helpful Mii had a gun thrusted upon her by a fellow Mii. The young man gave her a glare as she took it. You'd best get a move on, the blonde Mii with glasses much too big for him commanded in misspeak. We've got a job to do. He turned, leaving the pacifist behind him. The gun in her hand felt much too heavy. Much too powerful. She inspected the gun, and realized it was loaded. She swallowed hard, turning her head to gaze upon the machine that had created her. One by one, more Miis appeared from the machine. Each of them held no semblance of humanity or remorse. Each graciously took a weapon for themselves, and headed up the winding road before them. Taking one last gasp of air from the dusty room, the pacifist did her best to blend in. "Is it just me, or have you guys been seeing a lot more of those little Mii guys around here?" Pit asked suddenly, spying over his shoulder. The rec room was absolutely packed with Miis. Each Mii tried their hardest to blend in with the surroundings. A gaggle of them surrounded the pool table, playing the game absolutely incorrectly. Another set were at an arcade cabinet, bopping away at some corny game. More still were just standing and staring directly at the group of smashers propped up on the sofa. "I suppose I can see where you're coming from," Paluten mused, completely relaxed. "But even if it is the case, they are just Miis. What could they possibly do to us?" "That sounds an awful lot like challenging the gods, Lady Paluna," Pit pointed out, rather fearfully. "They're definitely up to something," Fox muttered. He'd been distrustful ever since one of their kind had impersonated him. "That's not how you play billiards at all. They're throwing the ball. You don't throw the cue ball. They're plotting something." "Yeah, right," Falco hummed, kicking his feet up on the nearby end table. "Just because we couldn't see the real you one time you think the end of days is upon us." "It could be," Fox sparked back. "They're plotting. I tell you." The default Mii Brawler hadn't taken his eyes off the surmounting number of Miis. This wasn't normal. Every now and then a new Mii would come into the hotel, but never this many at once. Something was up, and this was bad. "No, I agree with McCloud," the Brawler said. "I know some Miis, but I'm sure none of them have orange eyes. Besides, they act like robots looking through at their surroundings." That news made some of them more suspicious. Miis with orange eyes is news even to the Brawler, but even then, there was doubt in the room. Paluten especially. "Aw, is Saul acting a little insecure?" Paluten mocked and patted him on the head like a puppy. The Brawler crossed his arms and scoffed, "Is she really not taking this seriously?" "I assure you, Pit, I'll be able to keep us safe if they are plotting," Paluten hummed in response. "Oh. Okay, Lady Paluten. I trust you," Pit murmured, sinking into his seat. "I swear, I see less and less actual fighters every day," Fox explained. "Have you seen Lumber or Mega Man recently?" "What about Rob?" "No, I sure haven't." "You can't blame that on the Miis," Falco retorted. He clicked his tongue, pointing at the door of the rec room that had just swung open. "Speak of the devil. There's Mega Man now." Fox looked as Falco had instructed. "Huh. Looks like I'm the asshole here. Hey Rock." Fox waved. Mega Man swung the door shut behind him, before gazing upon the five of them sat upon the couch. The rest of the Miis did just the same. Even the pool players stopped and stared. Mega Man's eyes glowed orange. The smashers also froze on the spot, eyes wide and stutters for any words to come out of their mouths. Then the Miis started walking towards the smashers. "You all get out of here now," Brawler shouted. This was enough to snap the smasher out of their fear temporarily. "I'll fend them off, just go." "Wait, but..." "I said go." No one argued any further and listened to what he said. The Miis tries to reach the other smashers, some of them managing to catch up to them, but the others are blocked by the Mii Brawler, who punched one of the Mii sword fighters away. Now the Miis are looking at Saul. The Brawler's heart felt like it's going to pop right off of his chest at any moment, but he knows what must be done. "I don't know what's going on," he said. He cracks his knuckles and gets in a defensive stance. "But I won't let you kill my friends." With a battle cry, the Brawler fends off the army even when he knows it's a battle he won't win. Needless to say, he was right. The hotel was up in flames. Miis were everywhere. Every race, gender, height and weight. There was hardly any standing room. Not that they'd let you. The Miis were ruthless. Everyone who wasn't a Mii, and even the few who were captured, or worse. A machine deep within the hotel spouted these non-feeling monsters. Beside it was a holding cell, where the smashers who'd fallen victim to the army were kept for questions. A dark force. A strong, dark force. A Mii much more powerful than the rest of them. His face burned an image into the eyes of whoever gazed upon it. He had an army of trained fighters. Fighters who weren't afraid to die for their cause. The hands didn't do anything. The fighters were on their own for this. They couldn't trust their overseers to do anything this time for them. Everywhere Shulk looked, he saw his friends. All of them fought their hardest, but for what? One by one, they were overwhelmed. One by one, they felt blades, bullets, or beatings. A terrible pain shot through his head. Shulk. Shulk. What's gotten into you? The young man blinked as reality began to blur back into sensibility. His breathing was hard, and his head hurt. It felt like someone had clubbed him over the head. With a groan, the Minato wielder rubbed at his temples. Shulk. Male Robin cried once again. What's wrong? You're sweating. Are you sick, or something? No. No, I'm not sick. He promised breathlessly, holding up a hand. I just had a vision. A bad vision. A really bad vision. It can't be that bad, female Robin said, shuffling in her shoes. Right? Oh wonderful. Another headache, Dark Pit huffed. How he'd come to associate with these people he didn't know. What could be worse than a day like today? Male Robin asked. Both Popo and Nana sighed sadly as they stared out the window. Rain again. It was as if the skies would never stop pouring. We need to get out, Shulk said. Now. What in the world are you talking about? Both of the Robins asked in unison. Pitu rolled his eyes, as Shulk began to panic. The Miz. They're coming. They're going to take over the hotel and we're all going to die. Quail. Came a distressed shout. All eyes present turned to spy Kirby rounding the corner, practically dragging a defeated Pit beside him. The angel could hardly stand, and was covered in wounds. They got Lady Palutena. Pit managed to get out. I swore to protect her. Pit passed out in front of the startled onlookers. We need to leave, Shulk repeated desperately. Does anyone know a place we can escape to for a few days? The Robins exchanged worried gazes. Popo and Nana panicked, hustling here and there, crying. Kirby, too, was nearly in hysterics. Only Pitu remained stagnant. I've got an idea, Dark Pit proposed. We can take the tunnel to the motel. Good, I like it, Shulk said. Suddenly, another vision hit him. Miss, by the 100, rounding the corner after them. A new fear came over him. Hastily, he threw the unconscious angel onto his back, before switching to the speed art. Go. 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 His vision came true moments after shouting the command. In a panic, the ragtag team of individuals sprinted for the back door. The tunnel was a blessing in disguise, faces. Every now and then, he could make out faces. He didn't know if these faces were friends or enemies. He hoped for the former, but he knew it was more likely that it was the latter. He had gone down fighting the forces for his goddess, after all. Pit fell on and out of consciousness. He hadn't a clue of where he was. This consciousness was often fleeting, and incredibly painful. What sounds he could make out were muffled and tough, as if he had a fishbowl around his ears. If he was completely honest, he much rather preferred being asleep. At least then he'd fade into a dreamless sleep where he felt no pain. The stages of consciousness were painful. The sleep was restful. In his sleep, he felt a pressure close down on his hand. Instinctively, he weakly squeezed back. He was alive. As alive as one could be in his situation. Run this by me again. What's going on over there? The assist trophies were in the company of strange guests. Sure, they knew these people. They'd assisted them out on the battlefield numerous times. But to see them in such a condition, so beaten and desperate, was a sight to behold. Knuckles stood at the door to the room Pit was housed in. The bedroom definitely was not accustomed to fitting so many people. Tiki sat at Pit's side, her hand encasing his own. Seeing him like this nearly put her into hysterics. But she remained stoic. There'd be a time for that later. Right now, she needed to stay strong. From what I've put together, there's a revolution going on. Some kind of revolution, Crystal murmured. She was encasing Pit's open wounds in ice. At her side, Riki was using a healing spell on the poor angel. Its effects were slow. These are laser wounds. Laser sword wounds. Who are you fighting over there? Darth Vader? That's just a movie, Dark Pit hastily pointed out. For a moment, his eyes shifted to Pit and Tiki. A small twang of remorse hit him, seeing how hard Tiki was trying to keep it together. What we've got going over there is real. Someone's gotta stay off the interdimensional cable for a while. She's got a point, Zero said, inspecting his own laser sword. We can't help if we don't know what we're dealing with. Cyborgs? Robots? Interstellar beings? Yes and no, Male Robin said. What do you mean, yes and no? Shadow asked, pointedly. This is going to sound crazy, but... Shulk started. Miss. We've got this. All heads turned. A new body has appeared within the motel, and it wasn't an assist trophy. Joker strode in, with Morgana on his shoulder. There was a brief moment as everyone took in the newcomer. Finally, Ashley spoke up. "Who's this Joker?" "Exactly," female Robin murmured, paying no mind to the little witch. "But how in the world did you know this place existed? And how did you get here so fast? You just came into our lives, like, last week." "I turned into a van," Morgana piped up. Another moment of stunned silence came over them. Joker rolled his eyes. "I know a lot of things," Joker said, "and I also know that 40-odd people won't be enough to deal with what we have at hand. That's why I brought a few more friends." Dramatically, Joker gestured behind him. Timidly, Luigi walked in, Meatball perched upon his shoulder. After the Green Plumber followed Ken and Gru. Finally, Rosalina filed in with Lucas close in tow. The young boy stuck timidly to his surrogate mother's side. "These were the ones I could convince to come with," Joker offered. "I'm sure others will come, but at that time it may be too late." They took Daisy." Luigi jittered. "The only reason I'm here is Meatball." The cat purred on her owner's shoulder. "Our army grows," Pitu responded sarcastically. "But it doesn't do jack shit if we don't have a plan. There's too many of them. And something tells us 2 little children in snowsuits aren't going to take down an army." Popo and Nana both made offended noises. "Did someone say plan?" both Robin said aloud. "We do have 2 tacticians and a seer," Ken pointed out. "And Kirby," Shulk added. The pink ball was watching the Prince of Sable. Something about the frog form made Kirby happy. "Well then," Rodan spoke, cracking his knuckles. "Let's get thinking. I've got mass to kick." And so their plotting began. Nearby, a traitorous Mii spied in. The pig-tailed Mii yearned to help, but was afraid. Sighing, she headed away. Perhaps another day. But before the discussion could go underway, the door suddenly bursts open, startling all the smashers and assists. "Is this the Miz? How did they already find us? It's that traitorous Mii, wasn't it?" The smashers and assist quickly bring out their weapons, ready for the fight of their lives. Expect it wasn't the army, just a Mii. This Mii's beaten and bloodied, barely being able to stand. Slashes is shown on his clothes and bruises are highly visible with blood streamed across his face. Instead of the orange eyes and clothes, he has regular black eyes and red clothes. He looks at the party in distress. "Good eye. Found you," he said weakly, as he faints on the ground, catching everyone off guard. At the hotel, the Revolution held council. "We need to redouble our efforts," Matt demanded, slamming his fist down on the table. A glass shattered nearby him, sending water spilling onto the floor. "You've already let too many get away, and too many are living in freedom." "What are you talking about?" Karen, a high-ranking official, responded. "Every one of those little idiots you've sent me after I've gotten. Ness, Bowser Jr., Lucina. All of them." "Yes, Karen, we understand," Obama sighed, playing with a nearby pencil. "You're good at taking kids. Isn't there some kind of, diplomatic approach we can take to this?" "Absolutely not," Matt responded. "You believe those savages would allow that? They kept us locked up in that bunker for ages. It's about time we take what's ours. Those damn hands are next, after we do away with their playthings. And those Mitrios, we will make sure that those 3 will suffer for siding with those savages, I will promise you. Disgraceful they dare call themselves Miss." "Right, I understand," Obama said, "but is it worth it to keep throwing our own kind away like this?" "It's for the betterment of Mikind," Karen piped in. "Right, Alice." Karen nudged another woman who sat right next to her. Alice nodded her head at that, not wanting to speak out of turn. In all reality, Karen scared the absolute shit out of her. Obama sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Bunch of warmongers is what they were. As long as I ain't dying, that's fine by me," came a relaxed voice. Jace, the resident's self-proclaimed wave of good vibes, was at his usual spot. Feet kicked up, hair parted down the middle. "It sounds as if the council is in agreement, then," Matt said, a sinister kind of smile on his face. "Tomorrow, then, we..." The door to the meeting room swung open. There stood a shorter girl. Dimpled and hair the color of mud, she stood with something in her hands. "Pee-pee? Who in the..." Matt cried out. Angrily, he reached under the table for a second glass, just to toss it at the floor. "Is there any security? Can anyone just walk in here?" Pee-pee came forward, revealing what she had found. An orb, shining and white. My, what is this?" Matt asked, taking the ball into his hands. "Hey, you put me down." "Master Hand?" "Yes, Xander? What is it that you want? Can't you see I'm busy? Master Hand responded. Indeed he was busy. Busy doing a crossword. I can't seem to find Master Core anywhere. What? That was, like, the one job I gave you other than announcing. Yes, I am aware. However, you know it. Master Core has a semblance of its own. Hey, fellas? Can you quit your squabbling for just 1 minute? We got a situation, Crazy Hand interjected. Coming forth, he tossed a ball to the ground. From this ball there came a vision. A vision of the revolution at hand. Do you think we ought to step in here? Master Hand and the announcer were silent for a moment. After that moment, all three burst into laughter. I can't believe I lied to him. I broke my promise, all out of my own arrogance. And now look at me. Palutena was grieving, and grieving hard. She'd been spared, yes, but it wasn't an easy spare. Far from it. The holding cell was not becoming of the goddess of light. To think she'd been placed in here by an army of Ms was an insult on top of an injury. Luckily for the Ms, the hotel did, in fact, have a jail. It hadn't been used in a long time. It was located down the hallway from the Mii machine, in a desolate part of the basement. A part of the hotel no one would come unless they were stupid, or adventure hungry. You aren't a failure just because you failed, Lucina assured from her own cell. The daughter of Crumb was doing her own lamenting, sitting in her much too uncomfortable bed. That is literally the textbook definition of a failure, Meta Knight spoke. He felt naked without Galaxia, and it angered him. You are a failure. I am a failure. We have all failed our fellow competitors. Shut up. Lucina whisper yelled through her teeth, you're not helping. He's right, Daisy muttered. She nursed wounds, being given just enough medicine to not bleed out. She'd fought tooth and nail to not be here. It didn't work. We're failures. But you've just gotta keep that hope up. Luigi and Pit are out there, with who knows how many others. They'll right these wrongs. Or they're dead, Meta Knight said, bluntly. Yes, of course. Or they're dead. No. Daisy huffed. They're fine. I bet you they're mounting an attack of their own. Hey, Palutena? Can't you just do that mimbly-bimbly communications thingy with the kid? Falco asked. The space pilot was taking his entrapment rather well. Maybe it was the fact that he'd always been rather fond of cages. I've tried, Palutena spoke. I don't know if it's the room we're in, the fact that they took my staff away, or something worse, but I can't get through to Pit. I hope he's okay, wherever he is. Hey, I'm sure he is, Lucina offered. Roy groaned. This sucks. How am I ever going to get any sleep now? With your eyes shut? Mario offered. A lemur chuckled silently to himself. Wherever he is, I hope he's in good hands, Palutena murmured. A door swung open to the holding cells. It was a warden named Jacob with another prisoner. Marth. Hero King? Roy and Lucina both said in unison. They've gotten you too? Forcefully, the beaten Marth was forced into a cell adjacent to Palutena. He was the worst off of the bunch, hardly able to sit up. Like I said, Meta Knight spoke up, sharpening an imaginary sword. We are screwed. Mare? Where are you? Isabelle was out on her usual walk. Dr. Mario had cleared her to take these every day, to help with the stress she had been experiencing. Oftentimes, the mayor, Snake, or a different villager would join her on these walks. However, recently, she'd seen them less and less. Her separation anxiety was growing more and more by the day. First Wolf, now this. She was determined to find either of them. However, she knew the former was a wider shot than anything. As she wandered the hallways, she took note of just how empty they had become. Unbeknownst to her, Matt and his army had redoubled their efforts. They wished to take over the entire hotel by the end of the month. To do this, Mii creation was ramped up. And Smasher survival rate was down. All according to plan. Mare? Wolf? Snake? Her voice echoed. Hastening her step, she found herself rounding a corner. There, in some, admittedly, rather ominous, hotel lighting stood the backs of a few familiar faces. Or, well, she assumed they'd have familiar faces. Their builds were similar to the villager she knew. There you are. It's been much too long since we've spoken. Isabelle said excitedly, all but rushing up on the group before her. She was overjoyed. So overjoyed that she didn't stop her stride until she was but a few feet away from them. A scent hit her doggy nose. She sniffed it, before a crushing realization came over her. These were not the villagers she knew. They reeked of malice. The 8 Ms turned around, each with a dead look in their eyes. The sight gave Isabel a fright, causing her to nearly tumble backwards. The red villager, with a killer glare in his eye, stepped closer to the dog, gun in hand. Isabel let out a shout. A yip. Was this some kind of nightmare? KNGH. Pew. A shot rang out. Isabel cringed with fear, balling up on herself. However, she felt no pain. Instead, a body of a Mii fell to the floor, before being reduced to ash. Startled by the suddenness of the shot, the rest of the Miis turned their heads. Behind them stood Wolf and a handful of villagers. "I don't have time for a one-liner," Wolf growled, baring his teeth and claws. The three actual villagers brandished their axes. But I've won harder. Wolf and the villagers got to work on the imposters. Their work was done in minutes, leaving them with only handfuls of ashes to show for it. "It's about freaking dark time you show up," Isabel shouted, in tears. She ran forward to embrace the four of them. Yeah, I saw you were busy with someone else," Wolf murmured. "What?" Isabel asked. "I saw that you..." Wait. Do you smell that?" Wolf sniffed the air. The three villagers did just the same. Unlike Wolf, they didn't smell anything. Wolf's eyes grew. "There's more?" "We don't have time for this," Isabel breathed out. Taking out her fishing rod, she hooked Wolf with it. "We need Lloyd rockets. Now." "Hey, what's with the..." Wolf asked. He didn't even get a chance to finish his sentence, before all the villagers and Isabel took out their rockets. Off they fired down the hallway, plowing through barricades left and right, and giving Wolf multiple concussions. Probably. He does have a pretty thick skull. Served him right for being an idiot. Finally, they were free of the hotel's walls, and surrounded by dense trees. "Looks like the rockets were a bit too powerful," Isabel murmured shyly. With no idea where they were or where to go, the five of them headed out in search of anything that could help the cause. Another adventure was at hand. With no idea where to go or what to do, the traitorous pig-tailed Mii wandered the hotel grounds. She didn't want to be here. She wasn't even sure if she wanted to have been created. If she was simply made to serve this unjust purpose, she'd have been better off not made at all. As she wandered, she came upon a strange-looking building. It bore the telltale sign that it was a smash building, with a logo atop its door. The building intrigued her, and made her wish to investigate. As she came in, however, she came to realize that she wasn't the only one who was curious. Matt must have known of this building. It was crawling with his goons and cronies, and with good reason, too. Items sprawled the walls. All of them were a button press away from being sent onto a battlefield. And the Miis were taking them all. The pig-tailed Miis snuck her way upstairs, not alerting anyone in the area. Somehow, this surprised even herself. On the top level, she found herself cornered in a long hallway, periodically patrolled by Miis with that sinister orange glow. Each heaved a heavy sack upon their back. With no other option for escape, the traitor did the unthinkable. She stuck out her foot from behind a curtain and tripped a Mii carrying a bag. He tumbled away, down a flight of stairs. The traitor Mii made note to apologize later, if there was a later. She rushed forward to reach for the bag. If nothing else, she could give this bag to the motel as assistance. She hoped the items in the bag would help their circumstance. As she reached down to pick up the bag, another hand met hers. A chill went up her back, and the chill increased as her eyes rose to see who she was. It was Alice, one of Matt's top advisors. "There," Male Robin pointed at a map. "This is where we stage our first attack. It's an easy entry point with low risk. That is, if they haven't been improving their security. Which they most certainly have," Female Robin speculated. "I say we split up and go at it separately." "That's risky," Male Robin said. "There's less risk if we all go in at once." "But what if it doesn't work?" Female Robin cried. She was pulling at her hair. It was a habit of hers when she was beyond stressed. I can't. We can't go at it there. If anything happens to them, it'll be on my hands. Your hands. If you haven't noticed, we don't have Dr. Mario here, and Pit's not getting better that quickly. Tiki's losing it, Robin. If we lose this, we all lose." Male Robin was silent for a moment. He bit at his bottom lip. He hated to admit it, but she was right. His plan all banked on there being no opposition at the point of entry. A knock interrupted both trains of thought. It was Shulk. "If you don't mind," the blonde started. "Of course not, come in," Male Robin said. "I just had a vision of the battle," he said, plainly. He looked them both dead in the eye. "We have to go through the front door." "The front? Shulk, that's ridiculous. They're going to have guys all along the place. It's stupid. Absolutely bloody stupid." All other approaches lead to immediate death, Shulk informed them, personally. I think it's stupid enough to work. The debriefing was short, but Shulk ran the plan past those in the assist trophy motel. They were going on a head-on assault. They were going on a full-on assault as soon as they were prepared. When this would be was up in the air. Male Robin argued that they ought to attack as soon as possible, as to stop the ever-multiplying army. Tiki argued that they ought to wait until Pit was better. He was, after all, a great fighter. This was taken under heavy criticism. No one knew how long it would take for him to grow better, and he was at great risk of injury. To the surprise of everyone, Dark Pit actually took Tiki's side. She's right. As much as I hate to admit it, she's right, Pit to argue. He's as good as I am. Wow. Phosphora laughed. Where'd this humble side come from, Dark Pit? Can it, was his response. A startled yelp came from Luigi, who had been paying the hearing no mind at all. Instead, his eyes had wandered out the window to the winding path that led up to the motel. Oh no. Oh no no no. Luigi cried, holding his face. What? What's the matter with you, Stretch? Ken asked, before following his gaze. His cheerful face fell grave. Oh. Down the path there walked two Miz with the telltale orange eyes. A great panic filled the motel. They had no defenses. If Matt knew this place existed, they were done for. Shame, the Black Knight mused, grabbing his massive sword. Looks like we're about to have two decapitated Miz. They were too late. Suddenly, the door swung open. Two pairs of orange eyes glared inward. And were instantly jumped. As Knuckle Joe went to town, a bag rolled from one of their possessions. The bag came to rest at Joker's foot. Graciously, he took it up, before realizing something. Wait, the Phantom Thief said. There was a pause in the beatings on the Miz. These Miz are different. I sense no malice in their hearts. Both Miz and Miss Peak vigorously agreed. Joker held up the sack, before pouring it onto the ground. The bag was absolutely teeming with smash balls and healing items. Nikki blinked at the items, before blinking back at the other Miz. I think they're trying to help us. Female Robin grabbed a smash ball. It was a real one. 100%, genuine, incomprehensible magic energy. Unbelievable. She muttered. The assist trophies and fighters removed themselves from the Miz. Alice and Pigtails breathed a sigh of relief. Mayday, Mayday. We are under attack. They're everywhere, and I need help. Samus's voice cut over the intercom like an arrow piercing its target. She'd been suspicious since day one, but never got around to investigating. This, in turn, might lead to her downfall. She and Pikachu were cornered. Completely cornered. They'd been avoiding the army wherever they could, but Samus knew there must be a bounty on her head. Ironic. What a way to go. The wind whipped against Samus's suit. Standing this high up on the roof was making her head swim. She knew she'd survive a fall from this height. But her suit was in no condition for that right now. Her power suit had protected her from much of the damage, but it had begun to flash messages at her she'd only seen but a handful of times before. These Miz seemed unassuming, but they hit like a damn truck. Breathing hard to herself, Samus took in the situation. There wasn't much she could do in the terms of escape. She had to fight and die here, or leave a prisoner. Neither option sounded pleasing to her. If only she could fly. In her panicked thinking, she'd missed an important detail. She wasn't alone. Pika, Pika. Pikachu cried, slapping Samus's helmet. This brought her back into reality, and she shook her head quickly. Blinking twice, she felt her heart sink into her throat. Ridley was also on the roof, breathing plasma breath on any Miz that dare approach him. No, Samus said. Absolutely not. I'd rather die than be safe with him. Pika. Pikachu groaned. The rat tried to pull Samus towards her greatest nemesis. Ridley noticed the two struggling, and fell silent. Pichu watched from his shoulder, before giving an empathetic look. With a deep groan, Ridley knew what he must do. Aaron, Ridley barked. This caught the attention of the bounty hunter. Even from under the mask, he could tell she was shooting venomous eyes. On my back, or I'll leave without you. Then leave. She called. A Mii gunner hit a square shot on her. She gasped out in pain. Pikachu, in a panic, hopped off of her and onto Ridley. Looks like your rat has more brains, Ridley sarcastically stated. I don't have to kill you after all. Goodbye, Samus. Ridley spread his wing, and was about to take off, when he heard her voice. Wait. I knew you'd come to your senses, the space pirate said. Soon enough, he felt her weight on his back. A shot sped past Ridley's head. Anger, He blasted the perpetrator with his breath. Off the 4 of them went. Some more willing and happy than others. Side note, Samus said, as the air whipped against them. I don't much care for you blowing up my ship. I don't much care for you, and yet, I saw pity on you. Ridley spat back. Now, shut up. We've got to find somewhere to be. There, Samus pointed. Down below them was the hub of counter-revolution. The shabby Smash Motel. In the main hall sat 2 masters of disguise. Blending in, the 2 of them used their prowess of stealth to escape the impossible odds and camouflage just like a chameleon. Ms. passed them day and night, not knowing that just before them were 2 of the fighters they'd been tasked to track. These 2, of course, were a cardboard box and a potted plant. The 2 best of friends. Plant. Do you read me? Came Snake's muffled voice from within the box. The plant poked its head out of its pot for a moment. I need food. I'll give you carbon dioxide. Piranha Plant supposed that sounded like a fair deal. Digging around for a moment within the pot, he retrieved for Snake a warm, half-eaten squirrel and a bottle of water. Thanks, Snake said, breathing heavily as he spoke. The plant gladly took the exchange. This was going to be a long revolution. Papa? Yes, Nana? Are we going to die? The question hung heavily in the air, as the 2 children contemplated the situation at hand. Papa bit his bottom lip, taking in the question before him. It was late at night. Due to low occupancy in the motel, fighters had to share rooms with residents. The 2 ice climbers shared a room with Pit and Tiki. Tiki was slumped over her bedside table, a hand resting softly on Pit's gently beating heart. That's a good question, Papa answered softly, as to not wake the others. Think of it like climbing a mountain. Everything's about climbing mountains with you, isn't it? Nana answered in a hurt, frightened voice. This is nothing like climbing a mountain. Papa, our home is invaded, and they're armed. How is this like climbing a mountain? It's dangerous. Stupid even. Most people would say don't even try. But you know what I know about you? About us? What? We aren't most people, Nana. We're heroes. Good guys. And all we've ever done is climb mountains. These miss. It's scary. Real scary, Nana agreed with her brother. But we can't be scared, Papa said. We've got to be strong. Our friends are in there. We can't end up like Pit. Yes we could. Real easy, Nana pointed out. I don't want to, Papa. As long as we have each other, we'll be okay. Okay? Okay, Nana murmured. She issued a soft yawn, shifting in her pile of blankets. The grown-ups say they have a plan. We're going to go right through the front. Do you think it'll work? Papa paused. I don't know. But they're the grown-ups for a reason, right? They know it all. We'll be okay. Nana shifted again, pulling up the covers. Okay. If you say so. Thank you, Papa. Anytime. Now. I gotta get some sleep. We've got a big day tomorrow. Those Ms. brought a lot of smash balls. I wanna see what we can do. Nana nodded her head. Good idea. I need some sleep, too. Good night, Papa. Good night, Nana. The dynamic duo soon began to drift off into a comfortable sleep. However, just as the kids began to sleep, someone else began to stir. Pit. The sentiment rang all throughout the motel. Everywhere one turned, they would find someone gleefully shouting at the top of their lungs. Samus, who had just entered the party at the Smash Motel, looked about to see what was happening. The usually glum faces were filled with cheer, as they proclaimed one thing. Pit was alive. Pit was alive and well. Tiki, naturally, was the first to realize the fact. Late into the night, the angel boy had been able to sit up in his bed, however tentatively it may be. From here, he spied that his beloved had been slumped over on a bedside table, refusing to move from the spot. Pit couldn't help but crack a little smile. Soon enough, however, he came to realize the condition that he was in. He was beaten and battered, and it appeared he was in a makeshift hospital bed. Could he ever be in the Smash Motel without being wounded? Gently, he nudged Tiki awake. In the middle of a soft snore, Tiki awoke. Pit, speaking gently, ushered for a glass of water. The half-dragon, in her stupor, didn't realize the severity of Pit's awakening. Groggily, she obliged. Only on the way back with the cup did she realize what was going on. Pit was alive. Tiki had shouted with joy, before nearly tackling the angel. It had hurt, yes, but Pit hugged her right back. He had then urged her to spend the night in the bed with him, opposed to slumped against the nightstand. It must have hurt her neck. Of course, she took the deal up in a heartbeat. The next day, Tiki broadcasted the news to the entire hotel. "It's a miracle," she proclaimed, "nothing short of a miracle." As Tiki expressed her joy, Dark Pit found time to visit his clone. Or vice versa. He stood in the doorway, as a conscious Pit stared blankly at the ceiling. Gently, Pit 2 cleared his throat. Pit's head turned to the side, spying his double. Soon, a grin spread over Pit's face. "Pit 2. He called happily. Yeah. I know we've been over this before, but you've probably got some kind of brain damage," Pit 2 sarcastically jabbed. "I'll let the nickname slide for now." Dark Pit slid a chair forward, so that he may sit at Pit's side. He crossed his legs, and then uncrossed them, and then crossed them again. What does someone say to someone who was nearly killed by a faceless mob? "So," Dark Pit awkwardly choked out. Luckily, Pit was the talker of the group. "Yeah. I lived, huh?" Pit grinned. He was a goofball, that's for sure. Regrettably, Pit 2 joked. "Guess you can't be killed, huh?" "I got close to it. Sometimes I thought I'd dip down below the line. But then I'd feel a pressure on my hand, you know?" Pit asked, squeezing at his palm. "And then I knew I couldn't give up. I'd have to keep fighting." Pit 2 swallowed his jealousy for the moment. "Yeah. That would be Tiki. She practically sat at your side the whole time you've been in here," Pit 2 explained. Awkwardly, the edgy angel stared skyward. "You're lucky, Pit Stain. It astounds me. How can you be smiling at a time like this?" "I've got a visitor," Pit responded, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "I'm alive. I've got friends who care for me and a kick-butt girlfriend who loves me. I know Palutena needs my help. I've gotta be positive if we want to get anywhere." Ugh. Positivity. The word made Dark Pit's stomach nearly churn. "Yeah. Sure. I guess," he muttered. Pit's positivity faded for a second, as he let the heavy atmosphere of the room close in. "Tiki told me the plan," Pit said. "About how we need to take it through the front door. Do you think it'll work?" Pit 2 paused a moment, before standing up. "I don't know," he responded, "but I think I trust the guy who can see into the future. If it's the only way, then we can do it." Pit's face lit up. "Hey. That's positive. I knew you could do it." Dark Pit groaned, before turning to leave. "Yeah, whatever. Don't get used to it, stupid." Dark Pit left, but Pit remained smiling. He was growing. Richter knew what was happening. And he didn't like it at all. Sure, he'd spent a few days in the closet. Sure, he was now terrified of Ms. And sure, he had no idea of knowing how his fellow fighters were doing. But he also knew that he wouldn't get anything done sitting in here. Gently, as his strength was now regained, he pushed open the door of the closet. It let out a low creak. The noise caused Richter to cringe, clenching his teeth as he stared out into the hallway. He saw only a few of those vile things. Nothing a little stealth couldn't handle. Within a few minutes, and before any of the others were any the wiser, he'd turned 3 Ms into ash with his knife. The vampire hunter sighed deeply, before taking in his surroundings. He cursed to himself for leaving his communicator behind in his room. He could really use a map or help right now. Walking on eggshells, the young man peered around every corner. At every corner, he found himself more Ms he needed to sneak past or eliminate. Where in the world? Richter began to ask, before he felt a hand clasp around his mouth and body. It was probably a good thing, because he nearly screamed as he felt the hands. Quickly, the hands dragged him, kicking and metaphorically screaming, around the hallway, and right into the clinic. The door was, of course, locked, but the person fumbled his way inside a secret passageway. As soon as the person released him, Richter grabbed his whip, nearly pelting the person with the vampire killer. He paused, however, as he saw who it was. "Hello, darling," Bayonetta greeted. "Your grandfather was getting worried about you. Many fighters have gone missing recently, you know. And I see you're already well acquainted with the Miss." She gestured to his wounds. You're not a Miss," Richter said, exhausted. "Why, I'm flattered you realized." Bayonetta laughed. "But I did just save your sculpted rear end. A thank you would be nice." Richter blinked up at the witch he'd been so hard on in the past. Awkwardly, he scratched at the backside of his head. "I'm indebted to you. My thanks." "That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me," Bayonetta hummed, going about the infirmary. "The doctor was nowhere to be seen. I'm sure your grandfather would be proud." "Where is he?" Richter asked. Bayonetta paused a moment, biting at the inside of her lip. "I don't know," she finally said. After rummaging about for a moment or two, she came across what she needed. Ointment and a sandwich. He's one of the missing right now. Blasted miss. I wish I knew what they did with their prisoners. If they keep prisoners. Her voice dropped. She began to apply the necessary treatments to Richter's wounds. Surely they don't just kill them, right? No response was made, as Bayonetta continued to treat Richter. Louder, he repeated, right? Judging by the condition you're in, things aren't looking too well for Simon. The Umbral Witch said. Her voice was filled with a sadness Richter couldn't quite place. Longing? Regret? Mourning? He didn't know, and it terrified him. We'll find him, Richter responded confidently. He's alive. He's got to be. Bayonetta glanced solemnly to the floor. After a deep sigh, she spoke again. Yes, I'm sure, she murmured. Her usual confidence was nowhere to be found. With little hesitance, she thrust the sandwich at Richter. Eat. I'm sure camping in the closet did nothing for your appetite. She was right. He was famished. Matt wrapped his fingers on the table in his throne room. It was lavishly decorated with priceless artifacts he'd found throughout the Smash Hotel. In fact, the room itself was just a repurposed upper lobby. Truly, it was the room of an established monarch. A mad king, yearning for more power. There was tapping at his door. Come in, he said in misspeak. In walked Karen and Pee-Pee. The two Ms. glanced at Matt, before looking away. The boxer rose an eyebrow. Well? I'm waiting. Did you find a way to harness the core? About that, Karen started. We've suffered casualties at the hand of the core. What? Matt asked. Are you really that stupid? How can a ball of energy do that? Pee-Pee shrugged. Karen struck her upside the head. The thing. It speaks. And it transforms. It makes stupid little quips as it does it, too. Matt heard this, but didn't believe. HMPH. Ascension core, then? Rarer still. It will make as a nice souvenir. Have you tried a hammer on it? Pee-Pee nodded vigorously. And it didn't work? Pee-Pee shook her head rapidly. Peculiar. Usually the hammer works. If I may interject? Karen asked. Matt allowed it. Maybe the core is part of those blasphemous gods that rule this realm. What were they again? Their feet, or something. Hands, but whatever, Matt corrected. Perhaps you can harness its power and become a god yourself. Karen suggested. Pee-Pee nodded her head again quickly. Matt liked the sound of that. With a horrifying sound, the Miss scraped up a sword, before inspecting it. I enjoy the idea, he told her. He pointed his sword at her. Karen gulped heavily. As long as you don't get any ambitious ideas, we will remain on the same page. If you do, well. Matt pushed the tip of the sword against Karen's heart. The general was shaking, and so was Pee-Pee. Let's just say you'll end up in a dustpan. And no need for that, Matthew, Karen murmured, shakily pushing the sword off of her chest. I'm but a servant, alright? No need to go all Game of Thrones on me. Keep it in mind, or my threat will become a reality. I know you want to overthrow me, Matt pointedly said. A heavy silence fell over them. Truth was, Karen wouldn't mind having the power for herself. Matt holstered the sword, before clapping his hands. Now that that's out of the way, let's get going, shall we? I have a sphere to harness. Fearful, the two Ms lead the Mad King of the Army towards where Master Core was held. Matt was grinning to himself the whole while. Lucario knew things no normal being could know. Lucario could sense the aura his friends and foes alike gave off. He could tell one's intentions simply by examining the energy they had exuded. These Ms. One big, bad aura. Every last one of them, or, well, most of them anyway, exuded an aura of darkness the aura Pokemon had only seen when faced with Tabug. The name sent a shiver down his spine. Once the dreaded Ms began to take over the hotel, Lucario had gone into hiding, keeping silent to everyone around him. Unlike Mutwa, who had tried to warn everyone of the dangers ahead, Lucario said nothing. Instead, he'd been devising a plan of his own. The only other soul he had told was Greninja. In a language only Pokemon could understand, Lucario explained to the frog what was wrong, and what they could do to stop it. Their plans changed drastically, however, as fighters began disappearing under their noses. Where were they being taken? The question was held in Lucario's mind. Both he and Greninja had went on many scouting missions, only to come up empty. But finally, it seemed, they had found it. Gazing down upon the heavily guarded but shoddy prison before them, Lucario and Greninja knew this was the place. Why would they waste so much power on a location so far off if it wasn't? The only question was of how to infiltrate. Going somewhere? a voice said. Both Pokemon jumped, before looking around for who had spoken. The fear of being found out terrified them. Up here, the voice beckoned. Both heads turned upward, to see Mii hanging upside down using his psi power. There's no way in. You'd better get comfortable. We'll be here a while. Jason, the head warden, spouted discipline to an underling. Rumor around the halls was that he had had a fling with the one and only Karen, but it had never been fully expressed. Perhaps the relationship with the crazy woman had pushed him over the edge. But the troubles of Ms. were no bother to the Pokemon. What really interested them was the set of keys dangling from the Ms. side. Lucario made a gesture at Mii. Mii shook his head. Tried. Too far away. Greninja and Lucario exchanged a glance. One of them would have to go and do it then. Of all the things Mii was, he was not stealthy. But Greninja was. With a quick and silent foot, the frog ninja skittered down the passageway, hoping to free the fellow fighters here. Lucario watched with bated breath, as Mii observed his hand, uninterested. Greninja moved like a shadow against the wall. Not a noise uttered from his footings. Not even Jason noticed as his keys were taken from right under his nose. Tomorrow, then. It was settled. Tomorrow would be the best option for attack. Too much longer and the army would be too large to defeat. Going right now would lead to unpreparedness, and a hurting pit. Tomorrow it was. The bus? Really? Have you seen how slow that thing is? Shadow scowled. I am not riding in that thing. She ain't that slow, you speed junkie. Coppin responded defensively. I can walk faster than it moves, Shadow retorted. It's the only way we can arrive at relatively the same time, female Robin pointed out. Besides, you won't be alone on it. You've got others to go along with you. It'll be a regular convoy. Morgana exclaimed excitedly. We'll have people in the air, and people on the road. What more could you want? Something a little more noble, Shadow responded. Alice reached into the sack of items and retrieved a gun. She gave Shadow a cheeky look. Only Knuckles burst out laughing. I don't get it, Joker muttered. Yeah, I'm in the dark too, Luigi added. Long story, Shadow huffed, annoyed. How the hell? How did she? Something dignified, eh? Like a motorcycle? Knuckles asked, still laughing. The rat was a lie. He did chuckles quite a bit. Shadow socked Knuckles in the chest. Back to the plan, Tiki redirected. Right, Shulk mused. He gestured towards a makeshift attack planning board. Unfortunately, Meatball was busy playing with the pieces. Shulk sighed. Those of you who can fly, fly in, male Robin said. Tiki? You'll be giving Pit a ride. Phosphora? You've got Dark Pit. Can you even lift me? Pitu asked pointedly to the goddess of lightning. Phosphorus scoffed at the question. Yes, and I can drop you just as easily. The rest of you board the buses. Either Coppiness or Morgana, male Robin continued. Skull Kid rose his hand. No. You can't call down the moon on the hotel, female Robin said. Skull Kid lowered his hand. How do we breach the first gate? Lynn asked. Her tactical mind was moving. Easy, responded Pit. Those in the air will provide a distraction. The Miz will focus all their attention on the two floating heads and dragons in the sky. They won't notice the bus full of people coming their way until it's too late. Then, we bust out these bad boys, Pit said, gesturing at the bag of smash balls. Everyone glanced at the bag. Question, Vince asked, the painter gesturing with his paintbrush. What in the world is that thing? Riki no. Riki no. Riki spouted. Smash ball. You smash ball then you energized. Shulk nodded. Exactly. It's like there's a surge of power in you, and you can unleash this huge attack. Think of it like, an energy drink that boosts you to your highest level of strength for a moment, Samus said. A cosmic kiss, Rosalina said. A reward for tracking these things. They let you destroy your enemies in one fell swoop. How does it work? Asked Tiki. They look quite complex. Press B, Ridley responded, smart-assed. What? Nothing. Just focus, Ridley responded. Do we have ourselves a plan? Male Robin asked. Ken and Drew nodded at each other. Luigi gave a thumbs up. Even Dr. Wily was willing to put himself out there. Well, female Robin said, it's settled then. Tomorrow we take the hotel back. Everyone gave one last look of approval. Tomorrow. And that's that. Alice said, she had explained everything she knows about the army and her leader, Matt. This gives the Mii Brawler more time to think. Matt is responsible for the army. Knowing this is not the Matt that he knew for a long time, it's still hard to see the kind gentleman commanding an army for world domination. "Are you okay, Saul?" The pigtails masked him. The brawler currently crossed his arms, and lowered his head. His eyes were closed until he opens them and looked at Pigtails me quickly. "Yes. I'm alright. It's just a lot to take in," gasped Saul. "Matt is the one who trained Alice and I, despite him kicking my ass more times than I can count in sporting events, boxing and swordplay especially." This got off a few giggles from both female Ms. "And yeah, I know this isn't the real Matt, but even so it's hard to fight a man who is kind and selfless, even when this is a different version of him. But it's like fighting a clone of yourself, it's insane. Alice, I think I'm ready for the final battle tomorrow." Alice pats Saul on the shoulder and gives a small smile. "You're a courageous boy, Saul, you've always have been." "Boy." "Yes, boy." She teased. This gave the brawler a chuckle. "But we should get some rest so we can be at full power against the army. There's no telling what Matt's doing at this second." "So," Matt spoke, arms behind his back. "I've heard you've been causing trouble for me and my associates." "You'd better believe I have." Master Beast roared. The roaring beast soon transformed into a pair of swords, and then a giant. Matt remained unmoved. "And I take it that you've taken the lives of a few Ms before me?" "Of course." Master Giant boomed. "Interesting. So what I've been told is true," Matt mused. His lack of fear was strange. Usually, when Master Core was angry, those who had angered him quaked before him. Slowly, Matt began to draw his weapon. "Then I assume you'll make quick work of me, won't you?" For a brief moment, Master Core transformed back into itself. "What makes you think you're so special, oh great revolutionary? You're just a Mii like everyone else. I've killed hundreds of Ms, and they were just like you. If you managed to kill them, I assure you they were not like me," Matt quipped back. He pointed his sword. "Let's get down to it, then." "Oh, gee, I seem to have forgotten my swords." "No wait. No I haven't." Master Core laughed, before transforming into 5 different swords of matter. Menacingly, they sliced through the air. Even still, Matt was unmoved. He gestured. "Strike first, coward, or I will make quick work of you." The godling did as was told, and the battle was soon underway. Master Cutter sliced and diced with 5 swords, but Matt moved just as fast. He was able to parry most strikes from the heavy swords without breaking a sweat. From the sidelines, a handful of Ms watched on. "Show that Asat who's boss, boss," Jace exclaimed. Peepee was digging into some popcorn, and not sharing with anyone. Except for Long from Pennsylvania, that is. Ka-ting. 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 Back and forth the two went at it. Matt grit his teeth, as he held his ground against the core. He would admit, he had underestimated the strength of such a core. Matt let out a hiss of pain as he felt the blade of darkness hit him in the side. Ouch. It certainly did hurt, but he kept at it. Screaming out, the power-hungry Ms sprang upward, landing a clean slice of his own. The swords began to decompose, and from it rose Master Beast. The animal, whatever it was meant to be, snapped wildly at them. Matt held his ground still. Ka-ting. Ka-tang. Matt's swordsmanship was impressive. He was able to skillfully maneuver the beast's attacks while hitting back with his own. It cried out in pain, and began to shift once more. "Alright, chump. I'm sick of your shit. I'm done playing games. It's time to bust out the one thing you can't bear to hurt." Master Shadow stepped forward, the glow of Master Core gleaming within. Matt stared back at a carbon copy of himself. Master Shadow smirked. "Yourself." Matt was growing tired. Master Core was no pushover. But neither was he. Once more, breathing heavily, the champion of Woohoo Island rose his sword. "You don't know who I am." Master Shadow lunged forward first, moving to strike the throat. Matt parried the attack, lunging forward with one of his own. It was just like fencing, but without pads and for your life. Their swords danced as if it were a ballet. "You know, Matt," Master Core started. "I kinda like you. You know, with your ambitions and whatever. Though, you could use a little work on methods, and not to mention form." With one fell swoop, Master Core had disarmed his opponent. Matt's sword flew through the air, and stuck itself in the ground 40 yards off. The Shadow Matt laughed heartily, before pointing his weapon at his opponent. "Looks like this is it, Matthew. Hope you've got a forgiving creator." Matt let out a scoff. "My creator is a machine. You don't know my struggles." "Hey, listen buddy. I was an accident too. We don't have to." But it was too late. Matt saw the moment of weakness, and took it. Rolling forward, he dodged the sword completely. Reeling backward, he punched, and punched hard. He punched so hard, in fact, that Master Core flew out of the shadow body. It slammed against the wall, and hard. Master Core's weapon clattered to the ground. In its weakened state, Master Core could no longer summon any of its transformations. Jerk. Jerk move. Master Core sputtered. It was blinking, its usual silky whiteness tarnished. Matt picked up the grounded weapon, before putting his boot on the orb. There was a sigh of pain. I don't see myself as a jerk, Matt said, his voice low. He lowered himself to Master Core's level, holding the sword out before him. I see myself as a god. You don't have to do this, Matt, Master Core pleaded. The orb could see the sharp end of the sword. You don't have to. Yes I do, he responded. If I kill you, I absorb you. You enhance me. And, if I'm honest, becoming a godly figure is pretty high on the to-do list. Master Core was powerless to do anything to stop him. Matt picked the god baby up, and held it in his hand. A shame we had to meet like this, Matt said, inspecting the ball. I feel like we could have been friends under different circumstances. Please, Core pleaded quietly. It was too late. Tossing Master Core into the air, Matt focused on his blade. In one swoop, Master Core was finished. A powerful insurgence overtook Matt. He cried out in pain, as power rushed throughout his veins. A consuming whiteness overtook his vision. His eyes turned from orange to piercing white. His goatee took the same snowy witness. Matt began a low laugh. It then escalated into a chuckle. Finally, he was howling with laughter. Standing, he felt stronger than ever. Turning to the lifeless husk that once was Master Core, Matt delivered a strong kick. The orb cracked through the wall of the stands, and stuck in the plaster. The dark matter that Master Core once controlled was now at the tip of Matt's fingertips. Watch out, Master Hand. Matt monologued to a terrified audience of his army eye. This dimension's mine now.
Watch out, Master Hand! Prepare yourself for the carnage!
The bus ride over to the hotel felt more like a funeral procession than a bus ride. Everyone involved knew the impossible odds that they faced. Everyone involved knew how little of a chance of success that they had. And yet, they still persisted. Perhaps it was the hope of victory, or the yearning for friends and loved ones kept captive by the army that kept them pushing forward. Shadow gazed out the window, reflecting on the choices that lead him up to this point. In one hand, he rolled a smash ball. He knew next to nothing about the item, but could sense the power that resided within the orb. In his time of need, he would crush it and absorb the powers within. Everyone else on the Morgana bus thought the same. Shadow felt a tapping on his shoulder, which jolted him back into the world of the conscious. Hey, Isaac greeted, some hesitance to his voice. What is it? Shadow asked, turning dismissively back towards the window. Well, there's a chance we're going to die. A big one, Isaac stated. It was a fact, after all. Don't remind me, Shadow murmured, gripping the ball in his hand. I just wanted to say that I've enjoyed my time in the motel, and I've liked having friends like you, Isaac said. He, much like Shadow, gripped tightly to the smash ball he'd been given. Shadow didn't respond to this. After a beat, he responded. We're going to survive this. What if we don't? Isaac asked. He, too, had faced impossible odds before. Something about the Miz threw him for a loop, however. Then we won't be around to tell the tale, that's all, Shadow responded. But I guarantee you that we'll be back at that shitty motel in no time at all. Isaac let out a chuckle at this, his muscles relaxing. He'd been tense the whole ride, but the simple joke made him ease up a bit. If you say so. Not to interrupt, but I couldn't help but overhear, Knuckles piped up. The first thing we do when we get back is renovate the living room. That place is nasty. Everyone chuckled, including Knuckles himself. You're one to talk, Crystal joined in. Leaving all those cans everywhere. Were you born on a secluded island or something? Yes, actually, Knuckles grinned. What the motel truly needs is an art room. Vincent chortled. Or a spa, Mickey hummed. Or a better way to communicate with the hotel, Alucard mused. The calm before the storm had settled in, as the bus distracted themselves from the impossible feat ahead of them. I wonder where they are now. It was a question Daisy had been asking pretty frequently at this point. She knew that the escaped fighters must be on their way. She hoped it's so, anyway. She'd give just about anything to be free from this mess. The food was only enough to keep them alive, and the questioning the Miz did was more akin to trying to break spirits. The goal was to have the fighters defect to the army. No one had as of yet. I'm certain they're on their way, Marth mused, resting on his lumpy, uncomfortable bed. I sure do hope so. I'd kill somebody for a maximum tomato. King Dedede, a recent addition, lamented. His wide body hardly fit within the tiny jail cell. At this point, I'm ready to eat my own boots, Lucina groaned. They've got about the same nutritional value as the slop those Miis have been serving us. With the benefit of cold toes, Mario added. He got a few chuckles, but the overall mood remained gloomy. I'm sure Pit wouldn't just leave us here to die, Palutena said. Though, her voice betrayed her confidence. Don't forget. They got that Kirby fella, too. He saved our asses too many times to count, Falco reminded. Suddenly, the door to the prison swung open. The silhouette of Jacob stood in the doorway, accompanied by a beaten and battered Captain Falcon. Oh, back from torture already? Zelda scoffed, sarcastically. How generous. As if blown over by a light breeze, Jacob fell to the floor and crumbled. Shortly afterward, the Mii was turned into dust. Behind him stood the outlines of Lucaria, Greninja, and Mutwo. The keys to each cell rested squarely on Mutwo's long tail. Two Miis stood guard at the front gate. One was stubby and fat, dressed from head to toe in yellow, and sporting a lousy mustache created from his eyebrows. The other was much different. Tall and lanky, the second Mii was dressed in purple. Warmio and Walumigi sat around on their guard duty, picking their noses and making obscene gestures and jokes to one another. Like creation like creator. Little did they know they were being watched. High above them swarmed the flying assist trophies. They were accompanied by a choice few fighters. Be careful! Dark Pit shouted fearfully, dangling from Phosphorus' hands. What? Are you afraid I'm going to drop you? The goddess of lightning joked. To emphasize her point, she dropped him a little bit. Pichu screamed out in fear once more. Yes. Very. His reaction only made Phosphor giggle with glee. Pichu. Pie Pichu. Pichu shouted at the dupe of. The electric mouse rode atop his trusty murderous companion, Ridley. You tell him, Pichu, the cunning god of death humored. Your mouse is so cute. Phosphorus smiled. Pichu stuck its tongue out, making the goddess swoon even harder. Stop. Stop stop stop. Dark Pit shouted. Why couldn't have I just rode your fellows? Tiki looks like she's got room, too. Tiki, mounted by Pit and in her dragon form, gave a surprised sound. We don't have time for this. Pit shouted to his airborne friends. We've got to clear the gate for the buses. Looks like there's only 2 guards down there, but who knows how many more are swarming inside. We need to eliminate them quickly and quietly. Ridley's eyes flashed with a sinister luster. On it. The space pirate swooped down. What he promised to be quick and quiet was anything but either of those 2 things. Instead, the death he gave the 2 false plumbers was prolonged and painful looking. Finally, they did turn to dust. Ridley soon returned to his allies. It's done. No one responded for a long beat. Kirby looked like he was on the verge of tears. After a moment or so, Pichu finally spoke up. Dude, he said. That was fucked up. Do you want to join them? Ridley snarled back. Dark Pit swallowed hard, before shaking his head rapidly. Pit tapped his ear. His communication device flickered on, connecting him to both buses. Angel 1 to ground patrol. Do you read me? Over. Yes. Yeah, Pit, we hear you loud and clear, male Robin's voice responded. What's with the code name? Let's just say the nest's unprotected. I repeat, the nests. Sounds good, female Robin cut off. We'll be there in 10. Don't get killed before then. Over and out. Pit chirped, before shutting his communications device off. Work good? Dr. Wily, the device's creator, asked. No hiccups? Nope, we're all good, Pit said. Let's scope out down there. Who knows how many more enemies we're going to have to face. Was that a pun? Dark Pit asked, relieved that they were finally decreasing altitude. No? Pit responded cheekily. I hate you. Something's wrong, Master Hand suddenly said. He felt a sinking in his heart, a sadness settling in him out of nowhere. I feel it too, brother. But what? What is it? Crazy asked. There was dread in him now, and he didn't like it one bit. I don't know, but IT can't be good. IT has to be something cosmically terrible. Something. All at once, the realization hit the 2 hands. Master Core. Oh my. Master Hand said, reeling. Oh no. Core? What did they do to Core? They're just miss. Crazy Hand asked. I fear they. Master Hand couldn't finish. He'd messed up. He'd messed up big time. And Master Hand wasn't the one who messes up. No. No, that's crazy. Crazy Hand shouted. He, too, felt a crushing defeat overwhelming him. Both hands grieved the loss of their youngest, and swore vengeance. They would not be trifled with. Inside the hotel, the anti-revolution met no resistance. Absolutely no Miz had shown themselves since the first two were decimated by Ridley. The whole group, Ground Patrol and Sky Patrol, walked the hallways with extreme anxiety. They couldn't have just up and left, could have they? Rodan asked hopefully. I'm sure more of them weird-ass Miz are around here somewhere. This is scary. Papa whined, holding tightly to his mallet. Kirby hopped along innocently. I don't know where they are, Male Robin muttered softly, reading Arch Thunder just in case. He turned towards their seer. Where are they, Shulk? You've got to know where they are. Shulk pursed his lips, holding tightly to the Monado. I've got nothing. No visions. The hallways were ominously dark, as if the electricity was cut from them. Luckily, Luigi had brought his flashlight, illuminating their path. This is ridiculous, Shovel Knight whispered. This has got to be a trap. Right. A voice said, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. Luigi screamed, dropping his flashlight. A clever you all are. I'm surprised you had the courage to make it this far. Show yourself, I'm mad. Nikki exclaimed, absolutely terrified. Oh, where else? Where else what? You're going to draw me a picture and hang it on the fridge. Cute. Matt's voice hummed. A force began to lift Nikki upward by the throat. The terrified Mitch choked out, struggling. A group of smashers lifted her back down. Gasping for air, Nikki found her glasses again. I could have had you all told the minute you stepped inside the door. Matt told them. But where's the fun in that? You are the reason we're here, after all. The walls of the room began to shift. Instead of a dimly lit hotel hallway, an all-out coliseum was being made around them. Or, at least, a swarm-like illusion of one. This is your last chance. Matt mused, his illusion coming to fruition. In the seat of the Emperor he sat, rapping his finger against a stone. His white gaze peered down upon them. Join us. We can rule this dimension together. Never. Both Robins exclaimed. I'll blow that smug look right off your fucking face. Samus shouted angrily. Shadow and Dark Pit gave him their favorite finger. Alice and the pig-tailed traitor stood their ground, staring up at the evil being that forced them to do his bidding. The Mii Brawler stood in his position, ready to face the dark clone of his teacher. You can stuff it, mister. Morgana shouted. Joker reaches for his gun. If he could eliminate Matt now, outside of the Smash environment, it would all be done. One bullet was all he needed. Joker grabbed the gun, and shot. The shot rang out, and the bullet flew. For a moment, Joker thought it was over. But Matt caught the bullet in the tip of his fingers. Without hesitation, the madman crushed it. The fighters present gave a worried gasp. No would have been sufficient. Matt quipped. Standing, the mirrors his arms. If you want to die, then I'll let you die. Remember, I did give you a chance to live. Army Eye. All around, gates slowly began to arise. From within the dark, orange eyes glinted out. Hundreds. Thousands. The fighters packed in tightly, readying their weapons. Each had a smash ball or two on their person. The pits readied their swords. Luigi held tightly to his poltergust. Knuckles pounded his knuckles together. Magic fluttered between the Skull Kid's hands. Midna's ponytail flared into a hand. The heroes' backs were against the wall. Matt pointed towards the group of fighters. Eliminate these tests for me. A horrible cry rose in the Illusion Coliseum. Miz, by the thousands, began to pour into the arena. The fighters let out a war cry of their own. A fight of monumental proportions was underway.
Begin.
The final battle was underway. It was a smashdown of epic proportions, as the heroes fought desperately and valiantly for their home. Karen was less than happy with her position. Yes, she was a member of the Army I. But she never expected that she'd be out on the field like this. She was a commander, not an underling like these clones. Still, Karen pushed forth with her regiment. She put down these few herself if she had to. The weight of the sword was hefty against her hand, and sluggish due to lack of use. No matter. Some smashers needed to be executed today. Forward. The Mii woman commanded. A war cry went up as the Army I attacked the arena. Their numbers far outclassed the fighters in the middle. However, everywhere Karen looked, a member of the army was being turned to dust. An arrow of light pierced a Mii to her left. Giant psi-powered hands swept through the arena. A Mii went flying backwards as Grid landed an especially powerful kick. Another Mii grabbed and thrown to the ground by that traitorous Mii Brawler. Oh boy, once all the fighters turn into rotting corpses, she'll make sure he will be tortured to no end even if he begs for the sweet release of death. Karen gritted her teeth, persisting amid the chaos. She gave one glance back at her crazed king. Matt sat high and mighty, staring down upon the arena as if he owned the place. Technically, he did. Was he staring directly at her? Karen's thoughts were cut short as she was jumped by two of her own kind. Two misbrandished weapons at the commander. Karen flashed them each a grin. Ah, my. I thought I'd see you two out here again. Let me guess. You're about to pull the moral high ground, aren't you? What you are doing here isn't right, Karen, and you know it. Alice spat back in misspeak. The pig-tailed Mii nodded in response. Karen spat at them. We're both misguided. Alice, you were highly favored by us. And Kate. Karen turned her attention to the pig-tailed Mii. You, too, could claim this crummy little hotel as your own. Wouldn't you like that? Absolutely not, Kate spoke. Especially not if it's your offer. Karen shrugged. Don't say I didn't warn you. She rose her sword. Let's dance, then, girls. And dance they did. Karen was, surprisingly, well versed in the art of the sword. Even in the 2-on-1 battle, she still managed to beat back the two Miis. Alice went in for a swipe, her own beam sword clanging against Karen's metal blade. From the sidelines, Kate took potshots with a gun she'd been gifted at the time of her creation. Karen moved to avoid them. Once more, Alice stabbed, only to be blocked. Moments later, she received a boot to the gut, knocking her backwards. The wind was knocked out of her, as her weapon clambered to the ground because her. Karen grinned devilishly. Oh? Is that all, then? She asked, pointing her sword at Alice. The swordwoman made glaring eye contact with Kate, who was preparing another shot. One more move and she dies. Kate froze in place. Her friend was in dire trouble, and she was at odds for what to do. Suddenly, an idea struck her. Digging around in her pocket, Kate brought out one of the smash balls she'd smuggled. What is that? What have you got? Karen demanded. However, it was too late. Kate's eyes glowed not orange, but with the energy bestowed upon her by busting open the smash ball. In a matter of moments, Kate had blown a hole through Karen with her mega blaster. The commander let out a scream of agony as she was consumed by the energy blast. Lifeless, Karen's body fell towards the ground before becoming nothing more than ash. All over Alice's face. Kate ran to the side of her friend, helping her up. Alice spat the remains of Karen out of her mouth, wiping the remains of the evil Mii away. Hey. Thank you, Alice said with a smile. So, your name's Kate, huh? Kate nodded her head. Yes. Yes it is. Alice cleaned herself off. For some reason, it sounds familiar. Both Miis ducked to avoid fire from behind them. They could speak later. Right now, they had a fight to win. Both Robin spouted spells and incantations to keep the army at bay, but could feel the feeling of being overwhelmed. For every Mii they destroyed, it felt like 5 more took their place. What's the plan? Female Robin shouted to Shulk, who was busy beating some poor Mii over the head with Ricky by his side. One of us has to get up to Matt. Shulk shouted back. That, or we need to get him to come down to us. Suddenly, a portal appeared between the trio. A swirling black vortex was held between lines of red. Out of the portal stepped 2 influential fighters. Bayonetta, who seemed completely fine, and Richter, who looked like he was about to vomit. I can't believe you made me do that, Richter panted. It worked, didn't it? And you only had to walk through the Valley of Demons. Bayonetta joked. She waved a hand at the incredulous fighters around her. Hello there, darlings. I supposed you needed some help, so here we are. A demon arm came from the portal, scooping up a handful of Miis before he could attack the still reeling Richter. The Miis were dragged to the underworld. About damn time you show up, Bayonetta. Rodan shouted. We could've used you hours ago. I was busy, she responded casually, shooting 4 rounds and landing each shot. But I'm here now. What do I need to do? See that asshole up there? Male Robin said, pointing to where Matt sat. We need him dead. Easy. Consider it done, Bayonetta remarked. It's not that simple, female Robin said. He's smart. Powerful. Seemingly omniscient. We need to throw a curveball at him. Kirby inhaled deeply, sucking in 3 different Miis. Each Mii held a different power, and, subsequently, gave Kirby a different power when in Hell. Kirby held a gun, sword, and angry eyes. Hoyo! The God's Lair shouted. All eyes went to the pink puffball. I think he's your guy, Richter said. I think you were right, Shulk agreed. The three Pokemon, Greninja, Lucario, and Mewtwo, led the no longer imprisoned fighters through the dusty corridors of the basement. I've got a bad feeling about today, Palutena muttered to the rest of the group. What could possibly be bad about today? Roy asked, a skip almost materializing in his step. We just got our freedom. There's no need to be so tight. I don't know, Palutena said, her eyes falling. They are fighting the menace right now, Mewtwo communicated telepathically to everyone. There is nothing we can do as of current. We can, however, cease the creation of the mist. How? Daisy nearly shouted, pushing through the group. I'd do anything to help those guys up there. The Mii, Lucario stated, is what's been making all the mist. Greninja explained. What he meant to say is that we need to turn it off, Mewtwo translated. Where is this machine? Zelda asked, striding beside her fellow fighters. Dramatically, Mewtwo gestured to a room before them. The place was absolutely crawling with mist, and held a portal to the Illusion Coliseum that the final battle was taking place in. King Dedede readied his hammer. I think it's clobbering time, don't you? Mario readied his fists. Daisy clutched her favorite frying pan. Meta Knight ran a hand along Galaxia's grave. Lucina wiped a dribble of blood off her chin. Oh yeah, they answered in unison.
It's time to end this!
Say your prayers.
The battle was beginning to feel like a losing one. The heroes were feeling heavier and heavier, their efforts absolutely dwarfed by the approaching manslaughter. There's too many of them. Knuckles shouted, as he decked a brawler who approached him. My painting can only do so much. I'm just about out of ink. Vincent lamented. Luigi, too, was beginning to feel the fatigue of the battle. Many of those around him had used their final smashes already. Lyn struck Miz away left and right with her critical hit. A momentary lapse in time was caused by Shadow's Chaos Control, which gave room for Alucard's vampiric curse to take effect. Even Phosphor's lightning rain couldn't keep the army back. Luigi, however, had not used his yet. He was waiting for the opportunity to be right. Suddenly, the younger Mario brother was seeing stars, as a heavy hit smacked him right upside the head. He let out a grunt of pain, as he fell to the ground. His smash ball, rolled out of his hand and onto the battlefield. Mamma mia! Luigi groaned as loopy, as he clutched his head. He wasn't given time to rest, as a foot caught him squarely in the chest, knocking him further from his precious power orb. Luckily, a feline friend was looking out for him. Meatball, sensing his master's distress, pounced the smash ball. It broke, and Meatball was engulfed in energy. Immediately, Meatball transformed into a large apex predator. A brilliant light shone from the cat, as the Tiger of Light was born from the power of the smash ball. The Mii that had stricken Luigi was quaking in his boots. Needless to say, Luigi was protected well by his pet. The production of Mii fighters was still, in fact, it was actually turned entirely off. In the fighter time of Mii, the Mii was flicked off by a group of now free fighters. Portals opened into the Coliseum. At first, the fighters, already beaten down and on their last legs, were terrified. Was this the end? Had Matt bested them? But no. Instead, more allies joined their side. Lady Palutena. An exhausted Bit exclaimed, falling to one knee beside his goddess. I told you I'd protect you. Tiki, in her dragon form, destroyed a few approaching Mii. No one was laying another finger on this storm. Palutena urged Pit to his feet. Let's worry about formalities later, Pit. I'm the one who's let you down. Luigi and Daisy shared a happy reunion, along with Lucas and Ness. All eyes were focused on the army. The work was made even quicker than beforehand. With this reinforcement, no one even got close to laying a hand on them. A clapping sound filled the arena. Everyone, including the Mii, stopped their fighting. It was Matt, hovering down towards the battlefield. Wonderful, just wonderful, Matt complimented. There was a smile on his face. I'm impressed, friends. Truly, pulling something like that? It takes guts. Cunning, too. Hey, why don't we call it a day before I remain the walls of the tunnel with your blood, eh? Matt stuck out his hand. Dark Pit battered it away, scowling at the other. Fuck off, dickbeard. Matt's eyes flashed with anger, as he pushed Dark Pit backward with extreme force. The leader of the Mii began to rise into the air, an aura of evil surrounding him. The swarm pushed his dark intentions even further. "Fine, then," Matt hummed. "Don't say I didn't warn you." What remained of the army I was too terrified to interfere with the battle that was at hand. Pee-pee and Long watched from a distance. Jace couldn't watch. The toy convict, even, remained still instead of causing his usual mischief. It felt as if no one was able to lay a finger or a weapon on Matt. With all the smash balls used up, the fighters had to rely on themselves to get the job done. "Harrison!" Joker shouted, removing his mask. The ghostly persona took form beside Joker and Morgana, ready to take on the Mad King. "How cute!" Matt scoffed, dragging Ridley across the floor like a rag doll. Samus jumped at him with murderous intent, only to meet a backhanded slap from the swarm. "You actually think you can beat me? How can you, when I've got the husk of Master Core to guide me?" Core wouldn't condone this. Marth shouted. He fought a massless hand that spurred him. He was losing. "I don't care." Matt snapped in response. Playfully, he flicked Mario into the air. The plumber shouted in shock, before cratering feet away. Luigi, angered by this, jumped upward. He managed to land a smack on Matt's forehead. Matt blinked twice, before dropping the fighters he was playing with. Luigi shrank in fear. An arm of the swarm popped up, crushing Luigi between its fingers. Luigi squeaked out, before feeling his lungs being crushed. He let out another squeak. "No!" Daisy exclaimed. Enraged, she took the crown from atop her head and hurled it. The points connected with Matt's face. The Ganima cried out in pain, dropping the plumber back to the ground. "For fuss!" Matt started, before being interrupted. Around him flew both pits. With Palutina's gift of flight, they circled the bald-headed bastard, firing arrows at him. He swatted the air with the hand of the swarm, only to be interrupted by dragon fangs digging deep into the massless form. Shadow and Joker shot at them with their pistols, as Knuckles and Crystal attacked directly. Matt shrunk into himself, as the blows kept coming. Again and again, attacks rained down upon him. Until, finally, angered to completion, he shouted out, "Enough!" Matt bellowed. The sound of his voice knocked his attackers back. The white of his eyes flashed hot. "I am going to enjoy killing each and every one of you. I'm going to choke the life out of them all, as you beg for mercy. I am." "Now!" Shulk shouted. From below him, Kirby spurted out of the ground on a burrowing snag guard. Wielding Galaxia and a fire emblem, the duo slashed upward with the legendary weapon and struck Matt right where it counted. The heart. A flush of pain overwhelmed Matt. It felt as if his very blood was being melted away by the fiery passion and strength of the weapon. Kirby pushed the sword in deeper, and Matt let out a muffled sound. The leader of the Mii fell to the ground on his knees, clutching to life. The white in his beard and eyes flickered, until finally settling back to the brown he had before killing Master Core. "HMH, Matt muttered, clutching his wound. It appears as if I've been bested. Odd. I had a vision like this. After absorbing Core. Perhaps it was faked, then. Perhaps." Didid whacked him hard in the head with his hammer. Matt stopped talking, as his body slumped off to the side. Just as so many others before him, Matt was dead. He, too, became dust in the wind. The hotel began to shake, as the great evil that had been the Army I was lifted. Without their leader, the rest of the Army I began to fade from existence as well. Pee-pee. Locke. Obama. All the Mii ceased to exist along with the arena, and soon, they were transported back to the hotel. This meant that Kate, born of the vile machine, was no more as well. She gave a gentle smile, knowing what must happen. She never did get to cuss out Palutena for her treatment of Pit, but knew that her favorite angel boy would live on because of her. Alice, who was not made of the machine, knew this too. She embraced her friend as she ceased to exist. It was a victory. But a victory at what cost? The Smashers and Assist trophies celebrated, hoisting Kirby high up onto their shoulders. They heralded him as a hero. The one who rid the darkness. Alice felt hollow. A hand came to rest on Alice's shoulder. A glance up saw that it was none other than Pit himself. "Hey. Don't worry about it," Pit told her, "we'll find a way to get her back." Alice nodded. She promised herself that she would. "Whatever the cost, I found Core. Or, what's left of Core." Master Hand held in the palm of his hand the lightless orb that once was Master Core. There was a definite cut through, along with cracks along the edges where it had been lodged into the wall by Matt's foot. The sight of the once living being made sadness fester in the hands and announcer. The Master Trio, in their state of mourning, spoke not in their usual booming baritones. Instead, they took a quieter approach, gazing upon the orb Master Hand held. Can't you just bring core back? Crazy asked, desperation in his voice. The sight of the little one being no more rocked the hand to his core. It isn't that simple, the announcer said. I'm afraid our little buddy is. He couldn't finish the sentence. For a disembodied voice, the announcer sounded as if he were about to cry. I can just make more. Crazy Hand said. He blasted the ground around the master office. Indeed, he did make more master cores. But these were not his master core. The babbling orb spoke on a variety of different topics, and with a variety of different personalities. Some were serious. Others insane. Still others studious. None of them were the real master core. Wrecked with grief, Crazy Hand snapped the orbs out of existence, before crumpling on the oversized desk. We messed up, didn't we, brother? We could have stopped all this. Crazy cried. Hindsight is a magical thing, Master Hand comforted, placing the lifeless orb on the desk before hovering over to comfort his grief-stricken brother. Yes, we could have. But we remained unmoved. It is too late now. This made Crazy grieve harder. Isn't there anything we can do to fix this? Crazy exclaimed, knocking things off the desk left and right. Where is the swarm to go? There was a pause, before the announcer finally spoke once more. Have you heard the legends? Xander spoke. His tone was soft. Very soft. Uncharacteristically soft, of the Reset Temple? Wario awoke in his bed, grunting awake. Stretching upward, the portly plumber scratched his backside, and picked his nose. A morning routine, really. He rubbed at his eyes, as the sunlight streamed in. He glanced at the alarm clock on his bedside table. It was blinking 12 o'clock. Wonderful. He overslept. Grumpily, Wario moved to massage his face, only to find he had grown a stubble in his sleep. What in the? He murmured. How long had he been asleep for? Quickly checking his Smash communicator for the date, a shocking sentiment was made known to him. He'd slept for a solid 5 days. Shaking his head, Wario checked again. Yeah, he had been sleeping for 5 days straight. This was an accomplishment even for himself. His eyes found the cord that was supposed to connect his alarm clock to the wall. There seemed to be a slash mark through the cord, but no sword or knife to be found. Moving forward to inspect it, Wario bonked his head on a tube. Massaging his head, he stared up at the tube. Taking one whiff of it, he gagged. Obviously, this contraption has been what kept him asleep all that time. He could even see some of the remaining noxious gases seeping out. And he thought his gas was bad. There was a letter at his bedside table. Hastily, Wario went to open it. Skimming through it, Wario soon deducted that it had been written by his Mii counterpart. It excited Wario. But as he read through it, he soon realized the worst had happened to his creation. Dear Papa Wario. It's a War Mii-o. Do you remember creating me? I remember. Unfortunately, I've been ordered to put you and your other Smash friends to sleep for a long time. We came in while you were sleeping, and put the sleeping gas above your head. If you read this, I''M.M.A. So sorry for doing what I did, but revolution was needed. As much as I loved you, Papa Wario, you were a big threat to Matt's plans. Your other friends are asleep, too. Some escaped the sleeping toxins and are being held in jail cells by the Mii. However, if you are reading this, it probably means I'm dead. Someone overthrew the revolution, and we are no more. I just wanted to say I love you, Papa Wario. Even if you did smell funny. War Mii-o. Unaware of the war that had just happened, or the casualties the Smashers had faced, Wario stormed out of his room. Whoever had killed his son was going to face his fury. Wario wasn't the only one who was waking up from the toxin-induced sleep. In fact, all around the hotel, those who had not been imprisoned or escapees were beginning to stir from their seemingly endless rest. Sonic rubbed his eyes as the situation became known to him. Bowser stretched his stiff muscles as consciousness finally found him once more. Even Mega Man's reprogramming seemed to undo itself, and his eyes flickered back to their usual ice blue. Simon Belmont was one of the individuals waking up from the toxic coma. Stretching his wiry muscles, Simon soon came to realize he was sprouting a whole beard. He touched his face, before the realization of 5 days of sleep came to him. Hurriedly, he rushed from his room and into the commons of the hotel. His eyes scanned wildly. One might have thought he was homeless if he didn't have the decency to put on his armor. The Miz might be gone, but their impact on the hotel was visible nearly everywhere. Most things were destroyed, or badly tarnished. Everything felt off. Simon had no idea what was going on. "Richter?" Simon called out to the crowd of smashers regaining their footings. "Richter? Bayonetta? Where are you two?" Both Richter and Bayonetta caught the shouts of Simon in their ears. Exchanging a friendly glance to one another, the two of them rushed forth to meet the man. Eagerly, they hugged him at his waist. My, Simon exclaimed, nearly falling backwards. The toxic had weakened him, but he was still able to keep his balance. "Do my eyes deceive me? I thought you two despised each other. Refused to be seen in the same room. What happened so suddenly?" Once more, Bayonetta and Richter exchanged glances. "It's a long story," Richter said. "We'll fill you in later." "Nice beard," Bayonetta complimented, her usual flirty behaviors pushing forth again. "You should keep it. Makes you look more refined." She added a wink at the end. The wink went right over his head. Classic Simon. "Perhaps I will," Simon said. He was utterly surprised by Richter's lack of resolve, but first, I need to know what happened while I was out. Was this Dracula's dark magic? Both Richter and Dale laughed, before filling the older vampire hunter. "What do you mean lost?" "I mean I have no idea where we are." Isabel, Wolf, and the triad of villagers wandered through the forest surrounding the Smash Hotel. It was surprisingly thick for what it looked like. Wolf could have sworn he'd seen that same evergreen 4 times already. The villagers bounded happily along as if this were nothing more than a nature walk. Wolf and Isabel, however, grasped the weight of the situation. "If we miss a match, we're going to get disqualified." Isabel whimpered. "Oh, this loss certainly wasn't any good." I know, Wolf said, trying to remain calm. However, they all knew the repercussions of getting disqualified. This time, Wolf was sure, the hands wouldn't allow for a bogus court case to appeal the rules. If they didn't appear for a match, unless otherwise excused, they were terminated. "Do you have a flare, or a firework, or something?" Isabel asked. "No. All I have is my blaster. It disappears before it gets above the trees," Wolf explained. "Oh, this is bad," Isabel whimpered. They had, in fact, been walking in circles for a few hours. The same trees passed by without the 5 taking notice. The purple-shirted villager, skipping ahead, found a new path to take. He started down as far as he could, before his vision was taken by the darkness. He ushered for the others to come. Come they did, and stare they did as well. "That looks dangerous," Wolf commented. "It's our only hope," Isabel said confidently. "Come on, we have to get back to the hotel as fast as we can." Wolf tried to protest, but his paw was taken by Isabel's. The suddenness of the action made a light blush speck his cheeks. "Damnedest dog." And so, the 5 continued off down the path, unaware of the creatures watching from the bushes.